I get to hang out with my very first coach, the only person who has coached me, seen me coach, coached with me.
Hello, and thank you for joining the Champion Within podcast, your premier go-to spot for unlocking your winning mindset. Whether you're an athlete looking to elevate your game to the next level, a coach leading the charge, an enthusiastic parent cheering from the sidelines, or an educator molding young minds, the Champion Within podcast episodes are packed with value, sharing the tools and strategies to unlock your potential and rise to new heights. Hosted by mentor, coach, and mindset leader Kate McCauley. Let's sit back and enjoy today's episode while discovering your champion within. And now, here's Kate.
Welcome into the Champion Within. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I'm excited for you to hear all of the information and wisdom that this episode is going to bring to you. Can you believe it's the 200th episode? I have no clue how we got here. Figuring it out as we go. My guest today, I'm really excited to share with you, is my dad, Jim Porter. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Kate. How about yourself?
Good. I'm excited to talk with you. We're going to jump right into it. I want to go back to when you were playing sports and just give me a rundown of the sports that you played at the youth level and then when you got a little bit older.
When I started playing, I think the first sport I might have played was Little League Baseball. It was a big thrill for me because I was only 9 years old and the team went from 9 to 12-year-olds. And just making the team was a thrill. I sat the bench most of the season because of my youth, but it was my start. In addition to that, in grade school, played basketball and football. Football was the Sharon Hill Ramblers, and basketball was CYO and Holy Spirit. I enjoyed those experiences. The one thing that I did miss was that my parents really did not attend many of the events. So that became a priority in my life down the road because I wanted to be able to be more involved with my children in their sports, even to the point of not just attending, but coaching.
Cool. We're going to definitely get into that. Did you continue to play all of those sports as you went on to high school, or did one of them become your favorite, or did they really just kind of all stay a part of your life?
I just played local club sports in high school. I started to get a focus on golf because my dad loved golf. And it was my opportunity to spend some time with him.
Cool. Why was Grandmom and Grandpop, your mom and dad, not at games? Was that something that wasn't as common? Were they just not available to go? Do you know why?
I don't think it was as common, but, my parents, my father particularly, came from a poor background. He spent a lot of time working just to keep the family going. Back in that day, it was one earner income families. He was working just about every Saturday, so it was hard for him to get to a game. I actually remember I told him I was pitching one Saturday, and I think I was about 15 years old, and he was able to get to the game, and that was a thrill for me that he was able to come to the game. But that was the way it was back in the day. I will say, as he retired later in life, he did come to see his grandchildren from time to time in games. But it was not as prevalent in that time frame for parents to come to games.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of different people I've talked with, either on the sidelines or on the podcast. So I was curious if that was the same. Do you remember the people that coached you at that youth level, or even as you continued through grade school and at the town club type teams when you were at the high school level? Were they parents mostly who were volunteer coaches?
There were some parents. I don't remember particular names, but lots of times it were young guys in the community who started to get involved in youth sports. And they may be, mid-20s or so, and they were heavily involved in coaching the baseball team or the football team.
So guys that lived in the community, maybe used to play and now were volunteering their time as the coaches.
Exactly. It was great that they were available to do this, and kids related to them because they were still young.
Right. That's pretty cool. Now, as you get to watch your grandchildren and you've watched all of us play, I think we see some of that where there are some volunteer coaches who are young. I remember doing that when I was in my early 20s.
Right.
I think Kathy Stout, who's local around here, was in charge of the CYO, and she talked me into a summer league for a girls' team. One summer, I was just thrown into being a coach. I loved it. But I feel like it's mostly parents now. Would you agree, or when you're at our games, what do you think?
I think it is mostly parents coaching these days, and that's good and bad. I mean, the good side of it is that you have older, more mature people coaching versus kids. But the bad side of it is sometimes they get too involved in coaching their own children. And I particularly was very conscious of that when I was a coach. I wanted to make sure that my children were playing a fair amount of time and not being played more than they should be.
Daddy ball, we call it.
Correct.
Right. So let's go to that before we even talk about maybe watching the grandkids play. You coached me,
Right.
3 boys, my brothers, those who don't know, I have 3 brothers if you haven't been listening for a while. You coached all of us at some point. Was
Correct.
it all basketball, baseball? Were there any other sports that you got involved with that
No,
I
it
don't
was
know
a
about?
combination, mostly baseball and basketball.
Right. That's what I thought. What was your favorite sport to coach? You don't have to pick your favorite kid. I already know the answer to that. But
Of course you do.
what was your favorite sport, though?
Honestly, I think my favorite sport and the sport I coached the longest was basketball.
Yeah. Why did you like that?
I liked it because I liked the fast-paced nature of the game, the kids, and what they were doing out in the court. You as a coach had to think fast, too, because many times you had to make adjustments in the game if you're falling behind, or you were also concerned about making sure when opportunity presented itself to get all the kids in the game. Sometimes that wasn't possible.
I'm curious. I don't remember, and maybe I was blind to it, but I don't remember there being people complaining about playing time for my kid, this daddy ball situation. And maybe it's because social media wasn't around, or maybe I just was at the snack bar after the game or something. Was that a thing when we were young, that people were coming up to you saying my kid didn't get enough playing time?
It happened, but it did not happen extensively. And the amazing thing to me, it usually happened with the kid who was probably the worst player on the team. And they had parents I don't think were ever involved in sports. And they would question why wasn't my child getting time or more time. And it became something that I just realized was something that they needed to do because they felt they needed to protect their child, which is not really the case.
That's an interesting take on it. I would agree that a lot of times people who are complaining, even now, well, I do think that the complaining is worse. Maybe I'm noticing it as a parent. And because I was a coach at the middle school level, especially when not coaching my own kid, but when I was coaching, when I was a teacher, but also when I was coaching my own children and just being in the bleachers watching my kids, there's a lot of complaining. People complain a lot. And I don't know if it's more or just we see it more, we hear it more, people just feel entitled to complain. I'm curious. I like the 2 things that you mentioned. That one, the people who were complaining the most didn't play the sport, and maybe not at a top level. Definitely. They weren't really athletic. I'm just going to say it.
Correct.
And secondly, that they were protecting their kid. I've never really thought of it that way, but that is an interesting take on it. They almost want to help them so the kid's not upset. Why do you think that happened?
I think it happened because they saw their kid wasn't getting much playing time, and they're coming to the games, and I think they felt, they wanted to see their kid get involved. Now, the kids themselves, they know who they are. They know if they've got talent or don't have talent. And I really never got complaints from the kids relative to their playing time. Now, there is a relationship between an older coach and, a young child that they would tend not to complain anyway. But as far as the parents go, I think they were a combination of frustrated that the child was not playing and also trying to be protective of the child, because I am sure that kids can be difficult among themselves, and they may talk to each other after the game saying, well, you didn't get any playing time. They're just harsh.
Right, to each other. I'm wondering if those feelings from when they were young, not being picked or not being in the game as much, that they didn't want their kid to feel those same feelings when kids are harsh because of it.
Right.
It's interesting that you say the kid doesn't really complain. I've been in situations as the mental performance coach where parents are complaining to a coach excessively to the point where it's inappropriate, really. And then a kid will message a coach or tell me or say it out loud. I don't agree with that. I'm sorry that my parents are doing that, or I'm embarrassed, that type of thing. And I think that's probably more common than parents know. What would you recommend if you were giving a message to parents first? And then we'll talk about how the coach could handle it. But what would you say to a parent so that they don't embarrass their kids? I do think that you do need to let your kid experience it. You can't protect them from everything.
That's true. And I think one of the key things that I would tell a parent is that you have to understand that your child's ability is not only dependent on their actual talent, but it's also based on the effort that they put into the sport. Many kids would come to the program and they never practice baseball or basketball outside of the program. And basketball is a really good example because that's something you can go out and find a basketball court and practice as long as you want just by yourself. Baseball is a little bit more difficult because you need kids to join you in practicing. But you also have parents that could work and practice with you. So that's a really important aspect that where they putting the effort in. And you can see the difference in some kids where they're putting in a lot of effort off the court because they have a passion for the game. Some kids are just joining the team because their friends are joining the team. So there's a lot of different realities for each child.
I think that's okay and important to remember that you gain a lot from being on a team. It's not just about your stats and how much playing time. Of course, everyone wants to play. I'm not saying that you want your kid to sit on the bench all the time. And I do think at the youth level, especially very little, that you do want to get the kids in so they can experience. But as you get older, middle school, high school, obviously, it's the best kids out there because you do want to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
But your kid can learn when they get in there, how much effort they give. And I love that you just said putting in the reps outside of practice time, and you can tell the difference. Speaking of that, and I don't remember doing this when I was young, to be honest, I probably should have done it at the college level, definitely. Did anyone ever talk about the mental side of the game and dealing with that when you were younger or when we were playing? Do you remember anyone even bringing that up?
There wasn't much talk about the mental side of the game, although there was a lot of things that you just naturally did as a team member. And one of them is learning patience, learning your ability to support your teammates. And these kinds of skills are used later in life, where a lot of people who played sports became very successful in life because of what they learned through sports. Patience and the ability to work as a team member really paid off for them later in life.
Yeah, I would agree. Just like we were talking about, you gain those skills, not necessarily basketball skills, but there's skills that you gain from playing sports. And it doesn't always mean that you are the leader. You gain different leadership skills you can use at work, school, life. I think that's important for everyone to remember.
You can become a leader even on the sideline as a player who doesn't get much playing time. It's all in your attitude. If you have the right attitude and you're sitting on the bench and the kids come off the court and it's a tight game and you're there cheering them on, that type of kid shows leadership skills and they're not even in the game.
Right. So true. I actually heard someone say recently, you don't have to be in the lead to be the leader. They were talking about running on a Nike app thing that I was listening to, but same kind of thing. You don't have to be out on the court to be one of the most positive, or you can be someone who is pulling people up, and in a genuine way. That's important for us to remember. I'm curious, before we move on to watching us coaching together, what was easier to coach? My teams as the girl teams, or the boys, coaching boys in general? And I know you stayed on beyond myself and my brothers playing, where you coached, I think, mostly boys after that.
Yes, I did.
So what was easier? Was it the boys?
Yes, it was.
And
easier
why?
To coach the boys. Well, some of the big things that I never expected when I first started coaching the girls, some of the simple issues is you needed an assistant coach who could go into the bathroom to get the girls out of the bathroom. In addition, I'll never forget my first game, and I'm going, girls, the jewelry has to come off. Secondly, you shouldn't really be wearing makeup to a basketball game. They didn't like that because they were trying to impress some boys probably who were watching them play the game. So there were certain difficulties that the girls had that you never had to question with the boys. They weren't wearing jewelry. They didn't put makeup on. So that's just two things that come to mind immediately.
Okay. Just two little differences that you didn't think of.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
I'm curious, what parents, and don't name them by name, we don't want anybody in the area sending me messages, but what parents were harder to deal with? The parents from the girls' teams or the boys' teams?
Probably the boys' teams, because boys are competitive as the girls are, but there was more of an acceptance by the parents as far as girls go. They were just happy that their children were involved in the sport. Whereas with the boys, I think there was much more of a competitive nature among the parents and the boys themselves.
Interesting. Okay. We coached together.
Yes, we did.
We coached Danny, my oldest,
right,
in summer basketball league, and then a winter league, a local travel town team. How was that?
That was good. It was a good experience, but there's so many different facets going on there. You're coaching your grandson, and you feel differently about your grandchildren than you do about your children, because it's not quite the direct relationship that you have with your own children. And I feel that the experience of having you coach with me was also something different. So the dynamics were unique, having your daughter and your grandson and yourself all working with the same team.
What was the toughest part?
The toughest part was balancing my relationship with you, Kate, because I wanted to make sure that we weren't stepping on each other's toes. And you were really good about that. And I felt like I did a pretty good job with that. Coaching Danny was no problem at all, because he's really into basketball. So he does whatever it takes to make himself better and to play as a team player.
I would agree. There was one game, I'm going to share a story and then we'll move on. I remember being in a huddle where you were calling a play and Danny spoke up in the huddle and suggested something else. And I looked at him and I was ready to kill him, because I knew that had that been a different coach, whether it was basketball, lacrosse, any other sport, football, anything he played, that he would never speak up to a coach. And I was furious. And he was our point guard. And I'm just going to say it. He was a pretty good point guard. And that team was a town team. And we were struggling to even get some talent that year. And I said, sit on the bench. And he was shocked that I did it. You looked at me even like, oh my gosh, like who's going to dribble the ball? But it was a moment where I had to tell him in so many ways of sit on the bench, not to speak up because of that dynamic that he had to know, just because it was his grandpop and his mom coaching.
Right.
That you're not in charge, kid. And I wanted the other kids to know too, that just because he's my kid, he's not going to call the shots here, like mommy, daddy ball type thing. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but I will tell you this much. The reason why I don't remember it didn't bother me that he spoke up.
Really?
And
okay.
part of that is that it's nice to think that you have a very familiar relationship with your grandchild, and it's okay to speak up if you had an idea. And so I get your perspective too. As a parent, you had to adjust that or talk to it in a different way. So
I like that perspective. And it's funny, I think that as a female mom coach for a boys team, I always felt that people were watching me a little bit differently.
Right.
And Danny, being a point guard, I always wanted to make sure that it wasn't the daddy, mommy ball situation. So I think that I almost overdid it sometimes. And I tried to treat it, whether it was him or Kylie as the girls' team, or even Ryan when he played like one season and decided he hated sports. I tried not to coach that like they were not my kid, but it's hard not to do that.
It is.
So I think maybe sometimes I almost overdid it, being tougher on him because I didn't want people in the bleachers thinking, mommy ball.
Of course. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I had that same feeling when I was coaching you, Kate, and your three brothers, that I didn't want people overreacting to, why is this person getting more playing time? In some instances, clearly they were some of the better players on the team, so they needed to get the playing time for us to be competitive. And that's one thing I always felt. When you go out to play sports, you're there not only for the fun of the sport, but part of the fun is being competitive. And some people, it's all about equal playing time and, trophies get awarded to everybody at the end of the season. And that really doesn't help the kids develop. You want them to develop their skills and realize that they have to work hard to become a better player. And in the end, that's going to pay off for them, not only as a player, but as a person.
Totally true. When you stayed on after we were all done,
right,
locally here, if I'm out somewhere, even at the Acme, or if I'm at something for my kids, maybe a fundraising event, younger people who I do not know will come up to me and say, is Jim Porter your dad? He coached me. And they get really excited. And I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, I have no clue who these, I call them kids because they're younger than me.
Right.
What was that like? Was it easier probably because we weren't on the team? And how long did you stay? I honestly don't know because I probably was at college at those points and I don't know these kids, but they still really, they're grown men now, but they still think about you and come up to me and say, wow, your dad, we loved him.
Yeah. I probably coached 8 or 9 years after you and your brothers were done playing. As you know, you were all very close in age, and I stayed on and enjoyed the experience. I loved coaching the kids and working with them. We were a small school as far as basketball goes, so we didn't get a lot of wins, but we did have a lot of fun doing it. And one of the most amazing things is people come up to even my wife and they say, oh, your husband coached me and it was such a good experience. And, that's very rewarding to hear. But as she says, I don't know who this kid is.
Right.
And some of them coming up a little later in life, they're bald.
Right. You don't recognize them.
They have full beards. And of course, their faces change. We're talking about
they were 7th and 8th grade, right?
Young kids. And they've got a totally different look. But I am very flattered that they still remembered me and felt like it was a good experience.
Yeah.
And, let's not forget, too, parents were pretty positive at the end of the season. They'd come up and thank me for coaching their kid. And that changed. When I coached with you and when Danny was playing ball, the parents were not as thankful as they used to be. Not that I was looking for thanks by any means, but I did notice one season there was only one parent thanked me after the season for coaching their child. I probably mentioned that to you, and it was just surprising that you didn't see that kind of thing. So there have been changes in the way parents react today compared to what they did years ago.
That's interesting. I actually make all three of our kids after a season go up to each coach, the head coach, the assistant coach, and say, thank you for coaching me. And sometimes I will admit this right now. There have been some coaches who I didn't think were that great, but I still insisted that my children go and thank them for their time, their dedication. And when I say I didn't think they were that great, there were just some things that I think they could have improved on. You know, they weren't horrible humans by any means. There were some questionable behaviors maybe, but, you know, in all, I think hopefully they wanted the best for the kids. And when it's all said and done, they were there, they were giving their time. I would think they probably did the best that they could with the resources that they had. But I think you're right. There is a lot of people now that just walk away and like, we're done with that. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I even make our kids, I try to. Sometimes they're pissed about it if Kylie has a bad race or, you know, if Danny had a rough basketball game. If someone's at their game, if it's you or mom, they're together, or, you know, Mr. and Mrs. McCauley, my in-laws, their aunts, cousins, I'll say, go say thank you for coming to your game, even each game, because I do think it's important to acknowledge the people who spend time with you. But that's an interesting point that you think some of that has changed.
Well, I like that dynamic, too, of saying, hey, you need to go thank your coach. And you're doing that not for the coach, you're doing it for your own child.
Really am, yeah.
That they have a certain respect, regardless of who the coach is, that you have to respect the effort that the coach has made for the team. And also saying, hey, thank your grandparents after they have come to your game. And we appreciate hearing that, knowing that, you know, they are told, but they still come up. And many times I was just at a lacrosse game yesterday, and your brother Jay made sure that his daughter thanked us for coming to the game. And at first it was something I think that just skipped her mind because we go to a lot of games for the grandkids. But when she thanked us, she had a big smile on her face. And that told me all I needed to know.
Yeah.
That she was truly thankful for us coming.
Yeah. I've noticed too, as my kids get older, they just do it sometimes. You know, it's like just part of what they do now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even after maybe not the greatest performance, they'll say, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. So many things there to see Lucy, my niece, do, like here, I wasn't at the game, but to hear that she did that and smiled, because you need to come down after a game. It is about having fun and saying, you know, I'm glad these people are here to support me. And if you don't have a good race, you didn't have a good lacrosse game, a good basketball game, there is that time where you have to say, okay, this isn't my whole identity.
Right.
I'm also a granddaughter, a friend. You know, it's okay to now go out with my friends after and get something to eat and have fun. This isn't my whole life. And these people are here for me, that type of thing. So I think there's so many things that come into play there that it's time to, the game's over. I'm not saying you shouldn't reflect and what can we do to get better? How can we learn from it? But I think there's a lot of things that happen in those couple moments after the game.
Right. There certainly are. Also, I noticed it seems like the same situation that as grandparents, we are a handful of the few grandparents that come to these types of events, which to me says something about what's going on, because I'm assuming that most grandparents aren't working anymore. But then again, some of them may not be in the area. But I would have thought there'd be more support from grandparents for their grandkids in the different sports that they play. And even for us, it's a struggle sometimes, because I will give you an example. This weekend, we have baseball at 9. We have lacrosse a couple times in the afternoon. We have another baseball game in the afternoon. We have maybe a total of 5 games.
Right.
So we
for
do
the
what
grandkids.
for the grandkids,
Right.
but we do what we can. You can't be at 5 places in the same day.
I need to jump in here. Coach, quick question. Do your athletes look amazing at practice, but when the game gets tight or you have a big competition, they panic, lose focus, fall apart, start talking negatively before they even compete, missed plays, bad body language, heads down, you know they have the talent, but pressure is winning. That's not a talent problem. That's a mental side of the sport problem. I run a team program called The Champion Within, where I train athletes using my CHAMP framework: confidence, habits, attitude, mental imagery, and purpose. I literally retrain their brains so they know how to stay calm, get focused, and compete like the champions they are. When the moments get big, they need to know how to regulate their nervous system. It needs to be automatic. The teams that win consistently, they train their minds, not just their bodies. Just go down to the show notes, click on the link, or send me a DM on Instagram with the word team, and I'll get you everything you need. Okay, let's get back to the podcast. We were recently all at a game where Jay and Drew, and those who are listening, Jay and Drew are two of my three brothers, were coaching against each other. Mm-hmm. Local basketball, town ball type thing.
Right.
Their daughters are playing. And I know during some of those games, you and mom would split. You'd be on
Correct.
one side of the court, or sometimes there'd be two games going on in this gym and you'd be on one side, she'd be on the other. But during this game, you were switching each end. And there was a couple people in the neighborhood who were there who were laughing that this is what you two are doing to support not only your granddaughters who are playing, but Jay and Drew as the coaches.
Right.
So what is it like to watch your grandkids, watch your kids coach?
Well, the one thing I would say is I personally had a very neutral feeling about what we were doing. I was happy to be switching side to side. And my wife and I finally squared away. Okay, what are we doing? Are we doing a quarter on each side, a half on each side? So we got that all figured out, but here we are back and forth, switching and supporting both players on the court and both sons as coaches. And whatever happened, happened. And at the end of the game, we're all just friendly again with each other.
Definitely. What do you like best about watching the grandkids play?
I think the thing is that as a grandparent, you have one job there. You just need to support them.
Right.
So it's not whether they're playing great or playing poorly. It's just that you're there in the end to give them support. And particularly at the end of the game, when they come off, give them a hug and let them know, hey, you did good. It's never to point out all the things they did wrong. It's only to point out the things they did good and make them feel good about themselves.
Reinforce those things.
Yes.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you have any messages that you would want to give to any youth coaches since you were involved for so long?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and the longer you coach, the more you come to realize it. You have certain limits as a coach. There's only so much you can do, and you have to respect the way the games are held, the way the kids play, and not take yourself so seriously. Because in the end, it's really not about you. It's about the kids. And I would say that's the most important thing that any coach can do, is just accept the kids for who they are and not get yourself personally involved in the game.
I love this whole conversation, but I got to say, it's not about you. It's about the kids. Might be the most important thing that I'm holding on to right now. I don't know if that's because I just heard it, but I don't think we could say that loud enough, to be honest, because I often hear people say things like, oh, well, I want to coach my kid. What do you mean I can't be coaching my kid? And they're like, well, there's not a spot for you. This coaching staff is full. You know, you could help out with the JV team. And someone's like, well, I don't want to do that. You know, well, you're coaching for the wrong reasons then.
Right.
Right. You know, so I think you need to remember that. And that's at all levels, really. Not just youth level. That's at all levels. That it's about the players, the athletes, not about you as the coach.
Exactly.
I heard someone say recently that coach in the dictionary can be as a noun, but it really should mostly be, when you are a coach, as a verb. The actions you're doing, you know, the actions that you're taking to help your team. That's really important for people to remember.
And to remember also the consequences that you have as a coach with the children that you coach last a lot longer with them than it does with you. because they're the ones who take things sometimes too seriously. And you've got to keep that perspective too.
I would agree. I had a coach who was a local coach for softball and baseball, Ken Jordan. I don't know if you know Ken or not. He was involved in Notre Dame, but after you were gone, he said something about how it echoes in your head, things that coaches say, like what you were just saying, and that you don't even realize sometimes as a coach, something that you say stays with that athlete for years and can impact them not only in the sport, but in their life. So you do have to be aware. And listen, we make mistakes. You're human. So if you do say something and you realize like, oh, that came out wrong, own it and apologize. That actually is teaching the athlete something too.
It is. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Dad, for hanging out with me on the podcast. Kate. I really appreciate it. And everybody else, anything else you want to throw in?
No, I just want to congratulate you. Can't believe it's your 200th episode. And it's great to see your success with the podcast and the rest of your business.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I actually can't believe it's my 200th episode either. I feel like I'm still figuring it out, but here we are. Well, I appreciate you.
You've even outlasted most TV shows. They never get to 200.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I just keep showing up. I'm told that's what you do to be successful. So here I am. And I really am appreciative to everyone who listens and shares the podcast. And when you write a review, that's how more people find it. So thank you so much to all of you who are listening here today. If you like this episode, go send it to someone, share the link. We appreciate it. And thank you, Dad, for hanging out.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, come back on Sunday for our Speedy Sunday episode. Have an amazing rest of your week.
Thank you for hanging out with Kate today. And whether you're going to coach, teach, cheer from the sidelines, or hitting the field yourself, remember, mindset is everything. Don't forget to follow the show for the latest episodes, as we all need a little extra motivation, humor, and sanity in our busy lives. Now, go and unleash your champion within you, one step at a time. We're always rooting for you.